If the questions break, just read them. Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining me from. My name is Barton Seaver, chef, cook, author, proud father, husband, resident of the jagged, ragged, delicious coast of Maine, from where I am joining you from today. Here with the Ruby family, thank you so much for being a part of it. I am so grateful for you and for the opportunity to be here today talking about cold soups because, well, here in the robust bounty of summer, why not be talking about ways to utilize things? And top of the list today, we'll be talking about zucchini because, yeah, it's summer. It's time to use up our zucchini. Anyway, those of you who have joined any of these events before know that, well, they can be fairly dynamic as long as you are engaged. And please do engage. Send in your questions over on the right-hand side of your screen there. You will see the question text box if you have anything you'd like to ask me about anything, not just relating to cold soups. Hey, you know what? Go crazy. Why don't you ask me a question about hot soups? Wow. Mind blown. Anyway, ask me a question about anything you want, cooking, not cooking related, anything you want in there. If there is a question that you particularly like that someone else has already asked, just click that little heart icon to vote it up to the top, and I'll make sure that I'll see it. Otherwise, we have an event document just under my face down there on the bottom of the screen. You will see the event doc link there. I've got 3 recipes for you for soups that I was thinking about today. I made one of them, and just, well, things that we'd like to share with you and leave with you. I know that here in the Ruby family, we also have a number of folks joining us from our professional skills courses, from our Forks Over Knives and vegan cooking courses. So the questions run the gambit from all over the food spectrum. So please bear with us as we answer questions relating to everybody here, but also those focused on little niches of those categories as well. So with that, any of you who have joined me before, welcome back. Thank you for joining me again. But those of you who joined before know that I like to start off by, well, talking about something that I am grateful for, because the very most important ingredient in any dish that you will ever cook is gratitude and love, right? And that is what food is. It is an act of love. It is an act of kindness when we feed another. So something that I am grateful for today is, well, I get to wake up in the morning and smell the breath of an incoming tide, that salt, fragrant glory right here on the coast of Maine, and look out in my garden as the robust bounty of summer, as I said before, comes into bloom and ripens before my very eyes, and the peach tree, which sits just beneath our bedroom window as we gaze out past it onto the tidal flats, well, it is hung so heavily with fruit right now, so heavily, in fact, of ripening fruit that the raccoons get into it at night and fight over the ripening fruit, and, well, kept me up much of the night. But anyway, even with that subtle annoyance, I am still grateful for summer's profusion because it's wonderful and delicious, and that's why we're here. So for you all, I would like for you to just stop and think before you start cooking tonight or now at the moment, just something that you're grateful for, because it makes our food more delicious when we cook with presence and mindfulness. So, all right, with that, let's dive into cold soups. Cold soups, right? Cold soups are fun. Cold soups are dynamic. They can be anything you want them to be. And that is the first thing to start off talking about today, which is cold soups. It's not a category so much as it's a soup that was made in any which way you want to make it, which then you just allowed to get down to room temperature or chilled in the fridge. So there you go. There's not a lot of boundaries to this, right, folks? I mean, hey, if it's delicious to you, try it chilled. There you go. So cold soups. Now, traditionally in sort of high fancy French cuisine, the cold soups tend to be basically just hot soups made with the very same techniques that are then chilled down. So what are we talking about here? Let's talk about, well, puree soups, right? What kind of puree soups do we have? Well, gazpacho. We have potato leek soup. We have the zucchini mint soup that I've made for you over here. Cold soups can be made in any which way, where you are just using raw ingredients. So with that, Let's start out with Gazpacho, right? It's probably the most popular, sort of the quickest recalled to mind when we think of cold soups. So let's talk about Gazpacho and what makes it work. So I've got some of the recipes here in front of me. The Gazpacho recipe that I shared with you is from one of my cookbooks. To be honest, I can't remember which one. Anyway, it's a good one. So the classic Spanish dish here is a puree of raw ingredients: cucumber, onion, pepper, tomato, typically garlic, olive oil, and bread used as a binder. Not so much as a thickener, but as a binder, meaning just to hold together the tomato, really, which is that forms the majority of the base of the soup. And if any of you who have ever pureed a raw tomato before know that without that reduction of it through the cooking process, well, the tomato juice will separate. And you'll end up with tomato water, which is literally just beautiful, pure, clear, barely colored water that tastes so effervescently of tomato. And then you'll end up with the solids sort of settling out at the bottom. And with a gazpacho, the same is true. Even with the cucumber and the pepper and the onion in there, that will all separate out to the bottom. And so that bread helps to just bind it together, but also to add some heft to the dish. Now, do you need that bread in there for a whole food plant-based diet? Absolutely not. And in fact, even though I am not a whole food plant-based, most of the time I am, but because we're not strict to that in our house. But still, I don't typically use the bread. Why? Well, for one, we typically don't have bread sitting around the house. And in Spain, gazpacho is, well, it's the dish of the people. It's a farm dish, right? And so a lot of times it was a way to use up leftover bread. But because I don't have that sitting around all the time, what I tend to do is to add almonds to the mix. And almonds provide a bit of that same function of helping to bind together, not in an emulsion, but just helping some of those fats and just helping things stay together. So some of the things to think about with a gazpacho. Hold on one second, I'll be right back. Well, cucumbers. Where is a lot of the flavor in the cucumber? Well, it's in the skin, right? Well, so is the color as well as the texture. So when I am preparing a gazpacho, what I typically do is I peel, and I don't have a peeler with me, but I will peel the cucumber in sections, leaving just small amounts of the skin intact, and then chop it all up, throw it in. Now that skin will, unless you have a very high power blender like I use, actually, I don't know where my blender is. Okay, well, it's somewhere. We live in Maine. I trust people. A very high power blender like I use. I'm blessed to have and fortunate to have a Vitamix blender. You know, I mean, I could use this thing as an outboard motor on a small boat if I needed to. They're very, very powerful, and they will whiz buzz whir everything into a fine puree. If you are using like a food processor or something, or even a food mill with the cucumber, I would not recommend using as much of the skin because it just doesn't break down as much, even though you're going to lose, well, some of that ebullience of the flavor of the cucumber. But if you are making a very fancy pants dish that you are serving in a very fine restaurant where the color and consistency of presentation is really going to matter quite a bit, served in a fine white china dish, maybe you peel the cucumber all the way down so that you don't have those flecks of green in your soup. So the other very important thing that I should have started off with is that a cold soup made from raw ingredients, well, it depends fully on the quality of the raw ingredients, right? You're not doing any reduction of flavor through dehydration, or reduction of the liquid in it. So you got to start off with good tomatoes. Do I recommend a gazpacho made in February from regular grocery store product? No, I don't. No, it's not going to be compelling. Just the same way that a caprese salad or just sliced tomatoes with salt and a little bit of olive oil on them. In August, right now, is it worth eating? Is it the very best thing you'll put in your mouth? Absolutely. In February? Nah, not so much, folks. So The quality of those raw ingredients. The other thing I really love about gazpacho is that, well, it implores us, it begs us to utilize the less than perfect seconds, ugly fruits or vegetables, whatever you choose to call them. So in the summer, if you go to the farmer's market, you know what? Ask the farmer what they've got under the table, the culls, the tomatoes, which were maybe just a little bit overripe, not perfect for the market stall there, or ones that have blemishes or little spots on them, whatever it is. You know what? That tomato is still perfect. It is still wonderful. It may not just look as beautiful as they need it to, but the flavor is there, and that's what you're really going for. So with gazpacho, that raw pepper flavor is very traditional in it, but I tend not to like raw pepper flavor very much. And while green pepper is traditional, I like to use red pepper. The reason why there is that red pepper and green pepper are almost completely different ingredients to me, in the same way that green peppercorns and black peppercorns are just almost wholly different in their character. A red pepper is nothing more than a green pepper that has been allowed to ripen to its full state. And so it has all of the sweetness, it has all of that full fleshed flavor to it that I really like. Now, further though, as I said, I don't really love the raw pepper flavor. So you know what I do? I cook my peppers. So I leave everything else raw, but the peppers I cook. And in that way, it just softens them a little bit. It sweetens them a little bit. It also adds a nice smoky flavor to it. And like this, I was out grilling the other night. I had a really wonderful vegetable meal off the grill. And part of it was these roasted red peppers that I made, that I marinated. I put some anchovies on them, but also some mint, a little bit of mace as a seasoning. Any of you who have joined me before know that I talk about this dish almost every event that I do. It wouldn't be an event unless my cat tried to break into the kitchen, and there she is. So welcome, Minnie Biscuit, to yet another event. Anyway, so I had these peppers left over. I also had this marinated eggplant left over. These were fairy tale eggplants that I grilled right down in the embers. I then peeled the skin off, and I chopped up into rough sections the beautiful, moist, succulent flesh on the inside. Marinated that with some basil and some mint, a little bit of vinegar and olive oil. And you know what? I had this left over sitting after the meal. I threw this in my gazpacho. It was absolutely delicious. So while recipes for gazpacho might be prescriptive, the idea of them is not. If you like one ingredient cooked and not raw, by all means, cook it. Throw it in the toaster oven, broil it for just a few minutes to get rid of just that raw bite to it, and then puree it all down together. So that's gazpacho for you. One of the things that I really do like about gazpacho is another key factor to it, and the key factor really for almost all cold soups is going to be acidity and seasoning. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but in the recipe that I've shared with you, I like red wine vinegar, as it has that depth of flavor to it, the body, or also sherry vinegar is another great one. It has a nuttiness to it, a richness to it, an inherent sweetness, and I find that blends together very well with the ingredients. So that's a puree soup. So let's talk about maybe just a chopped soup, because another really fun way to make a gazpacho is, in fact, to just dice up all your vegetables into a very beautiful, fine dice, and then serve them in a broth, raw. What would that broth be? You can invent a host of things, whether it's a roasted vegetable broth to give you a late summer, sort of into autumn's lasting ripeness feel to it. Another broth that I really like is one that I find a really great substitute for veg stocks or any meat stock, and that's an aigo bolito, which is a traditional Provençal French broth or soup, as it's called there. And this is just a really wonderful old book I picked up in a used bookstore. You know, with the pandemic, well, at least having been in a lull, one of the things that I've been so grateful for is a return to used bookstores, which is basically where I've gotten my entire education from, that and mentors. So anyway, I found this one there the other day. But an aigo bolito is basically, it's garlic, the aigo part, that has been simmered down, lots of garlic, simmered in water, with spices, bay leaf, pepper, salt, olive oil if you care to use it. Sage and thyme is very traditional, but any of those sort of sultry, savory herbs work very well. And that broth that it results in is so wonderful, just as this sort of skeletal structure that adds finesse. It adds a little bit of that, what was that? Without without competing with the raw ingredients in the dish. So that's the Aigo Bolito. So if you're doing a raw diced gazpacho, simmer that. A whole clove of fresh garlic from the farmer's market, just cut in half, any dirt or little bits of skin peeled off, whatever, but just cut it in half. You don't even need to peel all the skin off, just any of that dirt removed. Simmer that, a bay leaf, a little bit of whole peppercorns, a couple of sprigs of sage, a couple of sprigs of thyme as well. The whole thing done in 10 to 20 minutes. You really don't need a lot of heat to extract that. Chill it down, and it's this wonderful ebullient broth. So I'll do that. Add in some diced red pepper, some diced tomato. You want something a little bit firm if you're going to be dicing it and serving it like that. Diced cucumber. I'll throw in some diced jalapeno. And we can talk about this year's jalapenos because they have been weird. Anyway, diced jalapeno, some diced shallot maybe instead of the onion, or a diced Vidalia onion to add that sweetness. Man, something like that is really good. It presents beautifully. Maybe a little salad of herbs on top with some very thinly shaved shallot, some mint leaves, some dill, something like that on top. I mean, wow, right? This is cold soups. As I said at the outset, there are very few boundaries on this category of food. So get creative. So the other thing I want to talk about, another dish and another recipe that I've given you, is one for an avocado soup. Right? Whoa, right. That's kind of fun. You haven't heard of avocados, but guess what? Avocados puree pretty well, right? Like, quick, think of a dish that uses avocados. Guacamole, right? Yeah, okay, well, just keep adding a little bit more liquid to it, and guacamole becomes this delicious, thick, rich, fatty, unctuous, delicious soup that provides this wonderful aromatic base for whatever you add to it. Hey, you want to go with a Mexican style? Awesome. Add just a little bit of cumin, lime juice, some diced red onion and cilantro on top as a little garnish. Man, throw some crunchy peanuts or semillas, the toasted pumpkin seeds over top for this crunchy, rich dish. Wow, how cool is that? And serve it ice cold, coming out of the freezer even, just for a few minutes before you serve it. It is so refreshing and so delightful. You can serve it thick, so it's palate coating rich, a very small portion, or you can thin it out to whatever consistency you want it to be, even being light and brothy. So there you go. But if you want different flavors for it, think maybe Northern European. Add lemon juice, add dill, add vinegar to it. You can add half and half, which is with the recipe that I gave you, I believe. I use a dairy base just because when I created this recipe, I wanted that sort of Northern European feel to it. But water. That Aigo Bolito, which I just suggested, a vegetable broth, whether it's a simple fresh vegetable or a roasted vegetable stock. I wouldn't use any meat stocks here. There's no reason for that, but I would say that smoke goes beautifully with this as well. Now, the key to an avocado soup and the key to, well, a lot of other cold soups is oxidation. And so with avocado soup, what I do is once I've pureed it, and you want to use a very high-speed blender for this because you don't want to introduce, you want it done as quickly as possible. You don't want to heat it up at all to break the emulsion of the avocado and sort of destroy that delicate flavor. But then you also want to prevent it from browning afterwards. And the key to that is, well, if you've got a container of soup, take some plastic wrap and put it directly on top. There you go. So it's touching. Don't cover the container, cover the soup. There you go, right? So you don't have any air contact at all. Section flavors. So think about your garnish, whether it's a little bit of smoked paprika, smoked sweet Spanish paprika, the pimenton, just an incredible, wonderful ingredient sprinkled over top, whether it's smoked trout, flaked and mixed with some shallot and olive oil. Or I've got a really fun ingredient that I really love to go to, which is I've got a smoked olive oil. This is I don't even know the brand of it. I tried it the other day. This is Castillo y Catena. Canena. I recommend it. There's many other smoked olive oils out there. This one was fairly expensive. I got it as a little bit of a gift to myself. But smoked olive oil is a really fun way to garnish avocado. Another thing you could do is, hey, smoke a couple of tomatoes. Next time you get your grill fired up, you don't even need to cook them. Just throw on a couple of wood chips, put some tomatoes over on the side just till they absorb some of that smoke, dice them up, mix them just as is, or toss them with some lime juice. Nice smoky tomato right in the center there of a cold, chilled avocado dill soup. Hey! Okay, yeah, if you invite me over for dinner for that, I'm coming. I mean, if you invite me over for dinner, I'm coming anyway. But I would be very excited about that soup. All right, and then the last soup, and I want to talk about this. This is now a soup where you cook the ingredients before pureeing them. So we've talked about raw puree soup. We've talked about a raw diced soup, which was the gazpacho, but could easily just as be like a minestrone soup as well with fresh young kale, thinly shredded and then diced into a very small dice. Maybe a can of beans added in, fresh tomato, fresh cabbage. I mean, whatever you want in there. It's all about managing textures and ultimately about marrying flavors together. So we've talked about those kinds of soups. We'll then talk about cooked ingredients chopped together and a soup in which you cook the ingredients and then puree it together and then chill it. And this here is a zucchini and mint soup. And look at that beautiful color to it. And it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous color. Makes my shirt look a lot less green. Like this is Kermit the Frog, beautiful green right here. It's just a wonderful color. And those of you who have ever grown zucchini or live next to people that grow zucchini know that the only time, well, really in Maine, the only time you ever lock your doors is during zucchini season, right? Because, yeah, people have to get rid of their zucchini somehow. So lock your doors or else you'll come home and it'll just be sitting on your kitchen counter. When I drop my kids off at daycare in the morning, I love it because I get to scope out which parents left their doors unlocked in their cars, and they come back and they go to shift their car out of gear and they grab a zucchini instead of their car shift, and I love it. Aha! Anyway, so using up zucchini. A great way to do it is this puree soup. I've started off with olive oil. You could use butter if you want a slightly richer flavor. Simmered down with garlic and fennel. And those of you who have joined me before know that fennel is my favorite ingredient that there is. Simmer that down together until it's nice and soft, and then add the zucchini. Simmer that all together with just a little bit of water. You could use that Bolito stock that I spoke of before. You could use any stock that you have, but really, I don't think that this dish requires much. I just use water. What I want out of this is the aroma of the fennel and the garlic. I want the richness of the puree. That zucchini holds a lot of air in it when you whip it together in a blender very quickly. But I also want just the freshness of it. I don't cook this down long and slow. I cook it down until it's just barely done, till the zucchini just barely wilts and basically doesn't taste raw anymore, but doesn't taste braised. So simmer it down just enough and then puree it down. And the key when making a puree soup is don't add all your liquid at the beginning to the blender, because it's really, really hard, and by really hard, I mean impossible, to effectively take liquid out of a puree soup. It's really easy to add it in if you need more, folks. There you go. So throw it in your blender with just enough water as you think, or whatever the liquid is from the pan. Zucchini are 90% liquid. So just be warned that they will exude out a lot of that liquid and provide almost all that you need. So add that in, puree it up, and then I add fresh mint. And that mint, the heat of the soup itself will continue to cook the mint and sort of blend it in, marry its flavors in. But puree it down, and then If you want to pass it through a tammy or a fine mesh sieve, go ahead and do so for this nice, super silky, beautiful texture. If you're serving in a professional restaurant, whatever it is, and you need that presentation, go for it. But otherwise, you really don't need to do that. Elegant, lovely texture. I mean, you can see it's almost, and it's got this palate coating richness to it, just a thickness that's gorgeous. Now, I chill it down like this, and when I pull it out to serve it, then I will thin it out just a little bit more. And that gets us to talking about acidity and seasoning. All right, this is the last thing we'll talk about, and then we'll go into some questions as well. We're just about at the time for that. So when things are warm, flavors are brighter. They're bolder. They're more present on the palate. They're more aromatic. Literally, steam lifts the flavors off of your palate and into your mouth. I mean, it's not just a physiological thing. It is a physical thing in the way that we respond to it and the way that the soup eats. So when it's cold, you need something punchy in there. You need something bright, because otherwise flavors can feel rather muted. So when you season it with salt, when things are warm, salt is more present and more effective at getting things to taste more like they are. When things are chilled, you need a little bit more salt in order to get to that same level of flavor enhancement. So just be aware of that. You don't need to add the salt when it's hot. You can taste and adjust seasoning when it's cold. That way you're adjusting to the actual experience rather than trying to guess ahead of time what it's going to taste like later. Just be warned, though, that when you put salt in a hot soup, blah, blah, it's dissolved. When you put salt into a cold soup, you got to stir it up and you got to wait a little while in order for it to get the full effect. So with that, just be careful. Season as you go, season slowly, and just keep going. But also, just enjoy the flavor of the zucchini. Like with all dishes, have an idea in your head of where you want to go, what you want it to taste like before you start. The other thing, and the other ingredient that really makes things taste better, is acidity. Now, this zucchini soup, you could use lime, keeping green on green, or you could use lemon, you could use vinegar. Any vinegar here would work, other than, say, maybe a balsamic. I don't want to add sweetness to this, as it's just not necessary. You want that sort of freshness of zucchini more than anything else. So I'll just add some lemon juice to this. You can even drizzle some on as a garnish. So acidity is the key to making cold soups really pop, really sing, for all their flavors to really blend together and marry perfectly. The other way to do this is through garnish. As I said, pop, acidity, salt, spice. Ha-ha, jalapeno. And we'll talk about these jalapenos again. I love spice. Now, a garnish, very finely minced shallot, very finely thinly sliced or minced jalapeno, mixed with a little olive oil, maybe a little smoked olive oil, whatever it is, or just left as is with a little bit of lemon juice. Toss that as like a little salpicon or a little salsa. Put that right on top. Wow, man, those flavors, that textural contrast is going to go so far in terms of mitigating any potential fatigue that the palate will feel. I mean, eating a big bowl of this soup, if it doesn't have those contrast points, is going to get boring. It will still be delicious, but you might just get fatigued of it. So having those little textural contrasts, but also the fresh to acid, fresh to salt contrast is really what works. And last thing I'll talk about is jalapenos, because they're being weird this year. I got a bag. I use jalapenos because they're not terribly spicy, right? Regular, so I can use a lot of them because I want a lot of chili flavor. I love them. I also love spicy stuff, and I'll use serranos and fresnos, and I grow a whole bunch of different peppers that'll be still another month until they're ripe here in the coast of Maine. But jalapenos, I think they've been going, generally the West, been going through a drought. I don't think they're getting as much water, and they have been wickedly spicy this year. I buy them by the pound bags, and I dip into them, and I just keep using them as I've been using them throughout my life. And like, wow, man, I even had to like just pause on a dish the other day. Like I'd be like, I can't even do this. I had to mix it into something else the next day just to get through it. All right, that's enough of me. Thank you for playing my psychiatrist there for a minute, allowing me to deal with my jalapeno problems. So here we go. Okay, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Again, the event document there just under my face on the screen there. Download that for the recipes I've talked about: an avocado dill soup, a gazpacho, as well as a zucchini mint soup. All of these can be made vegan. They can be made any which way you want them to be. All of them have been designed so that they are delicious no matter what you incorporate into them or what you garnish them with. But there are suggestions in there, so please enjoy those. Now, on to the questions. So throw in your question or vote up the questions you'd like to see answered. So here we go. Let's dive in from my friend BKJ. Hey, buddy. Nice to see you. Hi, Barton. It has been a minute, hasn't it? I have to watch the recording stat due to job making change. Well, I hope that everything is going well for you, my friend. Question, are there any cold soups that you present which include seafood? Yes. So the avocado soup, as I was mentioning, goes beautifully with smoke. So whether it's a finely diced smoked salmon, whether it's a smoked trout, anchovies on top, etc., would be absolutely gorgeous. The gazpacho is beautiful with a very finely sliced anchovies. You've joined me before. You've probably seen me talk about these. My favorite brand are I really just love these Roland smoked anchovies, available at online retailers if you can't find them locally. I like all anchovies, salt pack, oil pack, whatever, but those I find to just be particularly, even in terms of their flavor. A lot of anchovy producers might use different fish throughout different points in the year, and so you end up with very different flavored product, even though it's all allowed to be sold as anchovy. Those I find to be very consistent, always, throughout the year. Every box tastes very much the same. So I always know what I'm getting into. That's why I love those. The gazpacho, the recipe that I had suggests maybe a can of smoked mussels, which are absolutely delicious, entirely sustainable, wonderful seafood to be eating. So, yeah. Hey, BK, nice to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining. And again, I hope that all is well. You know, drop me a line, barton@ruby.com. Let me know what you're up to these days. I'd love to hear. Cheers, man. Thanks for joining. All right, friends. Kathleen. Hi, friend. Please recommend a quality non-stick skillet. I discarded all I formerly owned because I thought it was not healthy to use them. Now it appears I need one. Yeah, okay. So, you know what? I'm going to grab my glass of water over here because I've just been talking for a while. All right, so the non-stick pans that I have, so this is my egg pan. This is a brand called Misen, M-I-S-E-N, Misen. I don't know how it's pronounced, but online Kickstarter-funded product. I've had very much luck with these, and from what I understand, the research that I did, that the lining is safe, does not produce or impart any chemicals, which I know was a big concern that was sort of recently understood about some of the technology that's been used for a couple of years. I also, of course, have cast iron. I have cast steel, which are naturally nonstick once they get seasoned very well, and I'm sure that you've received that advice before. Those are more difficult. I won't say they're difficult, but they are more work and require a more consistent level of care than do these pans. So, for instance, this pan, I think I've washed it one time, and I've used it for 2, maybe 3 years now. That's how non-stick it is, because nothing sticks to it. So why do I need to wash it? Just a paper towel after I'm done, and I hang it right back on the wall right next to the stove. There you go. You can tell I haven't washed it because it's dirty on the bottom, but it doesn't so much matter. That's just, call that patina. It makes those of us, who are aging feel good about the patina we've put on. So my pans have patina too. Anyway, there are those. Those are the ones that I recommend. I also have some nonstick copper. Well, they're nonstick just because you learn how to use them. Nonstick is really about gauging your temperatures. If I'm sauteing a piece of fish, even a piece of salmon or something with the skin on it, it's all about getting your pan hot, putting in your oil, getting that hot, and then once you add whatever it is you're doing, whether it's fish skin, whether it's mushrooms, whether zucchini, vegetables, onions, whatever it is, when I add it to the pan, I also keep it moving a little bit. And the reason for that is that it gives the oil, it gives the fat, or it gives the pan a little bit of time, the heat, time to cook, to cauterize, to change the nature of the surface of whatever that ingredient is. And so what you've done is basically by keeping it moving, you've prevented those particulates, the piece of those ingredients that would stick to the pan, you've allowed them to cook while moving enough so that when it becomes static, well, those proteins or whatever it is just aren't there in their original form to stick to the pan. And I've had great success with that. So a little bit of technique, a little bit of product recommendation as well. Hey, Kathleen, thanks for the great question. I appreciate it. From Jane, on the same point, what is the best nonstick for an induction stove? I would say the same ones. I know these Nissan ones, I can see by the bottom that they work on induction. I'm pretty sure. I don't have induction, and I haven't worked with induction in many, many years, so I can't recommend from experience necessarily, but any pan that is appropriate for induction technique that I've recommended for regular stovetop would be the same. So cast iron, cast steel, they all work well. Hey, thanks both for your questions. Appreciate you. All right, from Veronique, do I have a detox soup to share with you? No, not off the top of my head, but I will say, not from my own personal experience, that is not detox diets are not something that I have much experience with, but this Bolito Soup is claimed to be a digestif, a palate cleanser, but also a hangover cure, which kind of recommends that it's a bit of a detox. And I've also seen it labeled as a healthful soup for much of the same purposes, though not called detox. So again, a Bolito, this is this wonderful old book. I recommend this one over other Provençal books, but this is a clove of garlic, raw, simmered in water with sage, thyme, black peppercorns, a little bit of salt, and water, a little bit of olive oil added in, if you will. So cheers. There you go. I hope that helps. All right. Is there such a thing as a cold detox soup from Crisa? Yeah, that Bolito would be delicious, drank chilled right out of a mug or anything like that. But here's the thing. Warm soups versus cold soups, anything that's delicious warm will be delicious cold, so long as you pay attention to those little nuances of seasoning. So adding maybe a few drops of lemon juice to it, or vinegar, and adding maybe just a little bit more salt or a potassium-based seasoning such as seaweed to the broth when you are making it. So there you go. All right, dear chef, would you share a favorite gazpacho from Adolf? Adolf, hey buddy, nice to see you. So my favorite gazpacho, as I was mentioning, the recipe that's there in the event document. Again, I like the flavor of cooked peppers more so than raw peppers. So other than that, everything raw, throw it into a blender. I like a good bit of soft garlic in there. By soft garlic, I mean like an elephant garlic or a big hearty version like German extra hearty, as opposed to a very spicy variety like Spanish or Russian red that has all that bite and that sort of back palate spice to it. Nice soft garlic clove in there, and then just roasted peppers, whether it's from a jar, whether you do it in the toaster oven or out on the grill. That's my preference. And I like a lot of olive oil in my gazpacho. I like that richness to it. I like that palate coating. I also like the beautiful sort of rusty orange color that it turns when you add olive oil in a thin stream to that blender as it's going really fast. Yay! Anyway. But without the olive oil, if that's not part of your diet, then it's equally as delicious. Thanks, bud. All right. Looking for soups without oil or nut creams. So I've been explaining this. I think almost all of them that I've been talking about today work in that way. Even the zucchini soup. You don't need to simmer the fennel and the garlic in butter or oil at all. You can just simmer it in water until soft and then add zucchini later. Zucchini being the ingredient that cooks a lot faster than the fennel and the garlic in that way. So you can absolutely leave all of the fat out in the gazpacho, as I just mentioned. The avocado soup, it's going to be a little bit hard to leave the fat out of that, being that the avocado itself is so rich, but it is a whole food, it is plant-based, and so it does not have that additional or extracted oil component to it. So there you go. And that Bolito soup that I keep talking about would be perfect as well. Hey, Patrick, who is my colleague there at Ruby running the backside of this. Patrick, would you please maybe put up this recipe at the top for Bolito, because I keep referencing it enough. So I do 1 whole clove of garlic, 2 cups of water, 1 sprig of fresh sage, and maybe 4 sprigs of fresh thyme, and maybe about 10 or so peppercorns. And that right there will yield you, just a small amount of the broth, but it will, that will multiply exponentially as it is. So just multiply that out. And you know what? Just because it's me, let's throw a tablespoon of fennel seeds in there. Yeah, because. There you go. There's some delicious soups for you. I hope you enjoy them, Peter. Thanks for the question. Hi, Judith. Nice to see you, friend, always. A fish stock recipe you're asking for, with hopes that the guppies are well. Thanks. Yes, the kid squid and his little brother are doing fabulously well. Thank you for asking. Anyway, you can't drink water. Fish stock recipe. So 2 ways that I think about fish stock. And it all depends on the final use of them. If I'm doing something where I want a very clear, bright, fresh seafood flavor to it, I will just bring all my ingredients to a simmer, and the ingredients being fennel. You can't leave out the fennel in a fish stock. Fennel, celery. I do not put carrot into a fish stock, but fennel, celery, onion. Bring that to a simmer with maybe just a little bit of white wine, if you want that or not, depending on if you want acidity or if wine alcohol is included in your diet. If using wine, it's important to simmer the alcohol off first. The reason for that is as soon as you add water, you dilute it to the point where you're always going to have some of that raw alcohol flavor to it. And I don't want that. If I do want it, I will add it to the finished dish, but not force myself to have it by putting it into the stock. So if using wine, simmer your vegetables off with the wine until the alcohol smell is gone, and then add your water. Bring that to a simmer. And when it's at a simmer, then I'll add my fish bones, my fish trim, whatever it is. And basically, I will let that come back to a simmer, and then it's done. Quick, light, bright flavors. That's all I want. That's what's going to give you that raw, not raw, but just the purest of flavor. The other way that I do it is if I want something that's been a little bit more sort of evolved or developed. That was the word I was looking for, developed. I will simmer my fish bones and trim in a little bit of oil, the white wine, along with the vegetables until it's fully cooked. And once it's fully cooked, then I will add cold water, bring it up to a simmer, and as soon as it comes to a simmer and coagulates, done. Okay, there you go. That is the only, those are the 2 stocks I would make. And the reason why I would make that cooked version of it, simmering in the bones, is that it cooks out some of that pure fish flavor. you end up with a more mild stock. You end up with a less clear stock. But I think that's more useful in dishes. Well, it just depends on what you want. If you're doing a wintertime dish of monkfish stewed with oven roasted tomatoes, all thickened up with a walnut paste that was mixed with garlic and olive oil and raw garlic walnuts pounded with olive oil, and that stirred into the dish at the very last minute with monkfish or swordfish, something dense and meaty. Woo! Then you would want that cooked stock. If you're doing something light and bright, like a mussel saffron soup, if you're doing something like a clam chorizo and tomato soup, light, bright Portuguese style, I would go towards that more raw, not raw, I keep using that fresher, brighter, lighter stock. Hey, thanks, Judith. Good question. I appreciate you joining, as always. All right, from Leslie. What is the name of an author of the book with a garlic broth? Sure. So this is a very obscure book that I found in a used bookstore. It was published in, 1972? Nope, 68. 68. Originally published in France in 53, called The Wonderful Food of Provence. It's mostly about vegetables, which is why I picked it up, and I loved it. But maybe if you can copy that down, or Patrick, if you can copy that, I'll hold it up here while I'm talking about it for a while longer. But another really good, really, really great book by Richard Olney, classic cuisine writer, wrote for the New York Times. He wrote a book called Lulu's Provincial Table. Lulu's Provincial Table is about the cuisine of the matriarch of the family behind the Bandol winery called the Domaine Tempier. And it's just a fascinating, wonderful, amazing book. So I would recommend that one as well as this one. This one is very scarce, and I paid a pretty penny for it too. It's just in good condition, but pretty rare. Anyway, there you go. Some great cookbooks, but the spelling of the dish itself is Aigo, A-I-G-O. The next word, Bolito, B-O-U-L-I-D-O. Aigo Bolito. Excuse me. Hold on one second. Something is bothering my chickens. Just making sure it's not the fox, who has been around too often of late. Anyway, farm life. Yay. Okay, so with that, but that Aigo Bolito and just the whole backbone of provincial cuisine and just their sensibility about using fresh herbs and the abundance of olive oil and textural contrast between raw ingredients like shallots and onions mixed with long, slow-cooked ingredients like ember-roasted eggplant. Woo! I mean, wow. Mint and basil, a little bit of vinegar on that. Serve it with a nice, beautiful rosé wine. Hi, life is good. Right? Man. Well, life is good, but you serve that eggplant dish with a little bit of French bread on the side, crusty, crispy. Woo! Life just got better. Yeah. Anyway. 1 clove of garlic, Elizabeth C. writes. No, not 1 clove. 1 whole head. 1 whole head. Don't skimp on the garlic. No way. Me? Barton Seaver, garlic farmer? Skimp on garlic? No way. Next event. You know, we should do a whole event on garlic, maybe. Would people be interested in that? Would you? Anyway, vote it up if you would. That said, if you are interested in me doing any events, please throw them into the comments here. Throw them into the questions. We'd love to serve you up what you want, right? There you go. But I, Barton Seaver, garlic farmer, never skimp on the garlic. So no, 1 whole head of garlic sliced in half across the equator of it is the minimum you should use. And if you're like me and you've got 1,200 heads of garlic hanging up in your barn, curing in its last week, and the barn is just so full of incredible scents, as well as the food dehydrator that I've got going on, fermenting my 40 or 50 cloves or so of black garlic that I'm making. Wow! Yeah, my bedroom is on the top floor of the barn in a finished space up there. Yeah, life smells good here. I do have my Peloton machine out there, though, and let me tell you, at the end of a workout, yeah, I too smell like ajo, the garlic. Anyway, okay, enough of my life. There you go. Sorry, oversharing maybe. Here you go. Hi, Mary Jo D. Nice to see you. Any ideas how to preserve garlic into the winter season? There you go. Yes. So one of the things that I do is I make black garlic, which is an ingredient that I learned of from the cuisines of China. Sorry, I keep touching my nose. I got a nose itch. Black garlic is, well, it's delicious. And you know what? I'm going to put everybody on pause for 1 second. I'm going to run out to the garage and I'm going to grab some. Hold on. I'll be right back. I'm coming. Hi, everybody. Thanks for putting up with me in these non-traditional presentations. If you haven't figured out yet, I'm very respectful of tradition, but I'm not myself very traditional. And that's okay. So, all right, Mary Jo. So what I do here is I've got whole cloves of garlic, and I do these fresh, straight out of the ground. And, well, as you know, and I hope that you're cooking with fresh garlic straight out of the ground. Sorry, neighbors are stopping by now. That's what happens when you live in a small neighborhood. People are just welcoming your house at all times. I hope that you're cooking with garlic straight out of the ground. It is one of the most ebullient, wonderful, fun, just flavors. It's so charming and wonderful, and it doesn't have nearly as much of that bite. Some varieties don't. So I take it when it is still very moist, straight out of the ground, before it's been cured, and I will wrap the clove in plastic wrap first, a couple layers of plastic wrap, and then a couple layers of tin foil. And the reason I do that is because I'm using a food dehydrator for this. And ultimately, I don't actually want the garlic to be fully dehydrated. I want it to just sit in a warm environment for long enough that it ferments. Now, I like a long, slow fermentation, so I do it at about 130 degrees over the course of 2 weeks or so. However, if you have a rice maker, a rice cooker, it's beautiful. It works just about 170 degrees, put it in the keep warm phase, and it takes only about 5 days. Your house will smell, so just be aware of that. Okay, so maybe do it in an outbuilding if you're lucky enough to have one. So what this ends up looking like, and this is probably about 2 or 3 days away from done. And it's a lot of waste in the packaging, I admit that. But it begins to take on a deep coloration to it. Oh my God, the smell of this. But it's beginning to darken up. In the next couple of days, that will be fully black and beautiful. Oh my God, the smell of it is so sweet. It is so luscious, even right now. So I'll make this tonight. I'll saute that in with a whole bunch of zucchini and squash, and then throw whole cloves of that in there, mash them up, and let them sort of emulsify in with the juices of the zucchini as it exudes out, as well as the oil that I'm sauteing in. Just make this sort of mash and this coated glaze, which goes over the whole thing, and I'll throw in a giant handful of mint. Yeah, life is good. So anyway, black garlic will last in the fridge for a couple of months. The other thing is doing a garlic confit, which is just to take whole cloves of garlic, peeled, simmer them in oil until they're at very, very low heat for several hours. Until it is very soft, sweet, succulent. And as long as that is covered with oil, those will last in the fridge for several months. Maybe I've kept it up to 6 months before I I can't professionally recommend that long, but it will keep for a long time. But the other thing is, because it seems like you're growing your own. So I grow 7 different varieties of garlic. This is down from 12 last year that I grew, and I've been selecting out the varieties that will get me through a season. Some species, some varieties, like German Extra Hardy, which is a very soft, sweet garlic, doesn't have a whole lot of that back palate bite. I prefer that, especially when cooking for my kids, because it doesn't set them off as much. I got a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. Though they're adventurous eaters, I've still got to tone it down a little bit. So I grow mostly that, and that lasts me for about 9 months. If I cure it properly, which is a little bit difficult to do when you live on the coast and you get the sea smoke fog rolling in every night of the week. But when it's cured fully, it will last for 9 months. Spanish garlic, Spanish red, Siberian red, Russian red. I found that I can get those to last 9, 10, 11 months. This past year, I only went 1 month buying garlic at the store between my own harvest lasting me. I also have access to a proper root storage. So I guess that would be the best way to do it, is sort of to utilize different species, varieties that will last a lot longer. Invest in proper root storage. If you've got an area of a basement that you can keep at 55, 60 degrees, sawdust, put the garlic in there and just keep it down in a cold, humid environment. There you go. Cold, dry environment. There you go. That'll last it the best. But there are a couple culinary techniques, as I just mentioned as well. Hey, Mary Jo, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, you can tell I like talking about garlic. I love me some garlic. Oh, yeah. And it appears like everybody else does, too. I got a bunch of yeses on the garlic class. So garlic class it shall be. Awesome. Thanks, friends. All right. From Laura, Chef Barton was wondering, does heat play a role in making food in general, especially dishes with vegetables, more appetizing when warm, or is it only a matter of preference? Thanks. Well, isn't that an incredible question? Thank you, Laura. I think it is preference. Certainly, and I don't think that it's preference meaning one is better than the other. But really, what do you feel like tonight? Do you feel like a gazpacho, or do you feel like a cream of tomato soup? Or just a puree of tomato soup, right? Both of those things are, no one's going to tell me that either of those are bad or wrong, or one is better than the other. I think it really is just a matter of preference to the experience, not even to the person, really, for the day that matters the most. Tomatoes that have been cooked obviously have a much different flavor. They have a lot more sweetness. Their flavor is more concentrated. There's a lot less liquid to it. The texture is going to be different. That sharp, bright acidity and wateriness that you get in a sliced, bright, fresh tomato is going to be muted. And you're going to get a lot more of that sweetness. You're going to get less of the aromatic, though, as well. So I think that cooked or raw is, again, just a matter of experience, necessarily more so than even preference. Do I like raw jalapenos better than cooked ones? I do. That said, I think a jalapeno just has more to offer when raw. When cooked, is it delicious? Absolutely. But it just kind of, its heat, its personality just mutes to the point where it just becomes so background that it's providing a sort of a foundational role, but its ebullience, its charming personality isn't there. Garlic, could be said the same thing. Most people, raw garlic is just kind of not the greatest thing, except when you're eating a Caesar salad, except when you're eating an aioli. But other than that, give me cooked garlic, right? So I think it really depends on the dish. I think it depends on the weather, whether you want cream of tomato soup or you want gazpacho. But certainly, I think that a fun thing to do is to just try them both in either way. Raw is going to require a better quality ingredient. there's nothing to stand behind, right? There's nothing to hide behind. A raw zucchini carpaccio, sliced super, super thin and laid out with a very fresh red onion, sliced super thin, garnished over top, a little bit of pistachio oil or just raw pistachios or toasted pistachios for crunch over top, and some fresh herbs like mint. Whoa, man, what an incredibly delicious dish, right? Yeah, and it's a wholly different experience, though, than sautéed zucchini or roasted zucchini or grilled zucchini. So you've tapped into, I think, one of the bigger questions around vegetable cuisine, but one that I think has a lot of maybe pathways for discovery, but none of which might yield an authoritative answer. But I love the way you're thinking, that you're asking this. So, hey, thanks for that. I appreciate it. I hope the answer helped, or at least got you thinking in some fun new ways. Awesome. All right. We are just about coming up on time here. I've got a hard stop because I'm going to need to take care of my kiddo here. But I know that we have a bunch more questions. Wow, I'm going to try and get to them. But so I'm going to go a little bit quick here. Please share the vegetable stock recipe, also in the brand of toaster oven I'm so fond of. Okay, this is a Breville toaster oven, and I don't know the actual make of it, but it is a Breville, and it cost me about $129. And I've had it for years, and I love it. I love it. I cook so much in it. The vegetable stock recipe, the one that I've been talking about, I go Bolito. I'm not sure if Patrick was able to put that up. Doesn't look like he did. But again, that is 1 head of garlic sliced in half across the equator, simmered with 1 stalk of sage, 4 stalks of thyme, about 10 peppercorns, a tablespoon of fennel seeds, and about 2 to 3 cups of water. Simmer it down for about 20 minutes, chill it, strain it off, add a couple of drops of lemon juice. Beautiful, beautiful stock. There you go. All right. Have you got a good forks over knives, aka vegan minus oil ceviche? Ceviche, yeah. So that carpaccio of zucchini I was just talking about, leave off the pistachio oil. So zucchini diced up, or butternut squash, any sort of softer squash, marinated with lime juice, fresh red onion, mint, cilantro, and some nuts in there. I always throw nuts in my ceviches for texture. I love them, and I love the added flavor that it adds. Leave out the oil, the pistachios, any of those nuts also add that richness to it. There you go. Cool. All right, from Laura Haven, I love wine, but cannot drink or cook with a tiny bit once in a while without it negatively impacting digestive system. Sorry to hear. But I'm glad you figured that out. Is there somehow a way to neutralize the alcohol present in wine or other grape-based beverage similar to wine? So the answer there is I don't know if neutralizing it or just cooking it off is going to be enough for to negate the negative health impacts there, the digestive impacts. So I'm not going to recommend to that degree. But I would say look at verjus, VERJUS. It is the unfermented grape must. So it's basically grape juice prior to being made into wine. And the difference there is, no, this is not Welch's grape juice, folks. This is verjus. This is made from Cabernet Sauvignon grapes. This is made from Sauvignon Blanc. This is made from Pinot Grigio. Whatever it is, the wines that you like, those flavors. It doesn't always have the same level of acidity. It has a lot more sweetness because it is the sugar that gets fermented into alcohol. So be prepared that it will add sweetness to it, but that alcohol is not there because it was never fermented. It was cooked before it was allowed to ferment, thus stopping the fermentation. The other thing to add would be to maybe add a little bit of vinegar to that, even a wine vinegar, which I'm not sure if that has any negative impacts for you, but that's the other suggestion that I would use. Don't be afraid of vinegar. Vinegar is a wonderful thing. I use it. I use a lot of vinegar every day in my cooking. If I'm sautéing up zucchini for 4 people, and I keep talking about zucchini because, yeah, it's on my brain. Saute up zucchini. I'll add a 1/4 cup of vinegar at the end and let it simmer down or reduce. Is that a lot of vinegar? Yeah, it's a lot of vinegar, but I make my own. It's delicious. It's light. It's bright. It's ebullient. There you go. All right, thanks. From Daphne, I see yours are cold veggie soups. Do you have a fruit soup recipe for to share? And what fruits work well? Absolutely. Do I have fruit soups? Cherry gazpacho is really, really wonderful. Same things. Red pepper, cucumber, green, what's that word? Begins with an O. Onion. Oh my gosh. Onions. Jeez, Bart. Onions pureed down with some cherries. It's absolutely delicious and wonderful. Peach soup. I love peach soup. Roasted peach soup or grilled peach soup. Slightly underripe peaches because you still want a balance of acidity to the sweetness. Grill them off, whatever, cook them down until they're soft. You don't really want to caramelize them. You just want to cook them through. You could even just slightly roast them with some tin foil on top so they're not coloring, and then puree that down. And think about competing or contrasting flavors. So sweetness of peaches, all that high, beautiful aroma. What do you want to put with them? Cucumber. Cucumber and peach is great salad combination. It's a great soup combination pureed down together. Watermelon makes a really lovely gazpacho. Same ingredients again, onion, pepper, although with that I would use jalapeno pepper, not a red bell pepper. I would leave out the garlic too, but cucumber, watermelon, jalapeno, and a little bit of onion. Wow, absolutely delicious. I would put some almonds in there as well, just to help it emulsify, add some oil to it as well, because watermelon, it will separate out from solids to juice very quickly. So there you go. All right. I know you're not a vegan, but is cooking tofu in an air fryer okay from Yan D? Absolutely, Jen. Yes, I am not a vegan, no, but tofu is a wonderful and delightful ingredient, so I cook it and eat it. So absolutely, cooking in an air fryer, it works. It does, tofu being so moist, it doesn't, it hasn't, I haven't much seen it crisp very well. It really depends on the coating that you're looking at there, but does it work? Yes, absolutely, it does. All right, which type of brand type of salt do you recommend? Thanks. So, Christopher, I recommend whatever brand or type of salt that you are comfortable using and spending your money on. Do you need salt that was hand harvested by the innocent hands of youth from the salt flats, once blessed by Dionysus herself as she came down from the clouds over Mount Vesuvius? No, you don't need that. Is it sexy? Well, yeah, it's sexy. Yeah, it's awesome. And it probably comes in a really sexy little package that's probably pretty small and really catches the eye. It makes you think that you're going to be a really great cook just for using it, right? I mean, hey, I fall for these things all the time. I do. But you know what I use? I use Red Box kosher salt. And it's the only salt that I use. You know why it's the only salt I use? Because salting something is a physical act. It is a physical memory that when I pick up this much salt, I know exactly how much salinity I've just added to something. And unfortunately, while I was doing that, I added it to my glass of water. Awesome, Bart. Anyway, I know exactly how much I've added because it's a physical memory. And I got this from working on the line at restaurants. I mean, you don't sit there and then taste absolutely everything you do. And you're certainly not tasting somebody's fillet of salmon. You just have to know and get good and trust yourself, right? So I'm cooking over here and I just grab it and I throw it in. That's why using the same salt all the time is important, because that physical memory becomes rote. It becomes your fluency that you know exactly that. If I use the blue box of kosher salt, the other brand, Morton's, I mess it up. Why? Because the volume to salinity is different. Table salt, the salinity of that to volume is exponentially higher than that of the red box kosher salt. Now, I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other. I think that the red box kosher salt does have some benefits in that it dissolves quicker. You get more even coating and coverage to it. It dissolves quicker, so you get better penetration into things and more accurate seasoning more quickly. So is it better? Yeah, I'd say so. But it's all about you gaining fluency in the salt that you use. And do you need to spend $10 on 4 ounces of salt? Absolutely not. Just don't do it. Cool. Great question. All right, James, I can take just a few more questions here from James. I make a carrot soup. It's pretty much completely blended. Girlfriend insisted it's not soup because soup has stuff in it. This sounds like a fun table to be a fly on the wall for. Please end our longest and most bitter soup expert. Okay, so I'm sorry, unnamed girlfriend. Soup. I don't know the technical definition of soup. You could look it up. Look up Larousse Gastronomique, or just in the Webster's. Ask what soup is. But soup that is just carrots blended is in fact soup. To be named girlfriend. I'm sorry that I came out on James's side here, but that's where the dice fall on this one. Wish you well. All right, from Jerome. My wife cannot have oil or butter. Any substitutes? Just don't use them. There's enough richness in foods. The Forks Over Knives course, the Switch course from Ruby as well are also very, very good at teaching to those fluencies of how not to use oil, to brown vegetables, etc., to get all of that color to it, but also adding ingredients that have richness, such as diced avocado to a brown rice, whatever it is. You can add that richness, that palate coating satisfaction without adding those extracted fats. So pretty easily. But check out the resources from Forks Over Knives and the course here on Ruby, as well as the Switch courses. So cheers. All right. Can you add shrimp to gazpacho from Jamie? Yeah. Of course you can. I wouldn't puree it in, though. Please don't. Please don't. Dice it up. Poach it off in some water with a bay leaf in it or something like that. Very quickly cook it. You don't want to extract all that flavor in just enough water to barely cover them, or just saute them. Chill them down, dice them up, or slice them into beautiful fans. And you know what? Because I'm Barton Seaver, I happen to have a plate of shrimp sitting right over there because why not, right? So I don't think you can see me. So a beautiful way to slice them is just slice them very thinly. So that's the whole shrimp. And so I've just done a very, very thin slice of it. So a couple of rounds of shrimp like that, stacked up or sort of laid out like almost pepperoni on a pizza would be, is a great way to do it. Or just dice it up into very small little pieces, but you don't want it so small that you can't recognize that it is shrimp. Mix it with some diced jalapeno, a little bit of shallot, a little bit of mint. People know that I keep coming back to mint, my favorite herb. Anyway, absolutely delicious. There you go. All right. How do you use the bread, the almonds instead of bread in the gazpacho? So I puree them up with the tomatoes, which is typical of the bread, sort of added in at the end. Typically the bread is toasted, oftentimes in olive oil, so it sucks up the oil. It is typically yesterday's bread that's used, so you have that crusty, desiccated, dehydrated bread that's going to suck up the liquid from the soup and help bind it all together. Almonds, you don't need toasted. You could use raw, whatever. I like to do toasted because of the flavor, but add those in, puree them up. You want to add them in the very beginning, though, with the tomatoes. Just let it puree. Let it go. High-speed blender. You really need a high-speed blender for this. Because you really want it to let it get to an absolute puree. And there's my little 1-year-old who just, when he sees Dad, he shrieks, and Dad just shrieks for him too because I love him so much. Anyway, okay, 2 more questions here. What would the best cashews replacement be? So cashews have a really broad, deep flavor to them, and an intense sweetness to them. A replacement for that, I would say, is Brazil nut. It has an incredible amount of fat to it, but also that same sweetness and aromatics. The other 2 that I would say a little more common would be pistachios. Raw pistachio nut meats have that same lingering sort of depth of sweetness and of richness, but also walnuts. Raw walnuts raw fresh walnuts are absolutely delicious. And by fresh, I mean still the dried bag you get at the grocery store, but just Make sure they're recently bagged, or buy them direct from the farm. There's a lot of California farms, for instance, that do direct sales of fresh walnuts for this season. I can't tell you what a better product it is. I mean, you'll never go back to just store-bought. Again, those two ingredients there. So, all right. Yeah, Daphne writes, Lulu's Provençal table, not provincial. You were right. I'm sorry that I misspoke on that. And if Patrick followed my lead and mistyped that, I apologize. But yes, Provençal table. Lulu's Provençal table is a book that I recommend as well. Thank you for that correction, Daphne. I appreciate that. All right, last question here from Michael. Same pans for an electric stove that I recommended earlier? Yes, absolutely. Electric or gas, those pans that I recommended, the Misen, M-I-S-E-N, as well as the Mauviel, M-A-U-V-I-E-L, copper pans that I use, where cast iron work beautifully well. Their high-performance pans work beautifully well on electric as well as they do on gas. So, okay, I've got to take off. I'm so sorry I didn't get to all the questions, but they are all wonderful. You are all wonderful. I am grateful for you for joining us. I'm grateful for your comments on garlic class that will be coming up. Please do drop me a line, barton@ruby.com, to any other questions, comments, concerns, whatever you'd like to communicate to us. Please do join us again for our upcoming events. Eric and Ken trade off the office hours events every other Tuesday. Join them. Otherwise, hey, cook with love, cook with care, cook with generosity and gratitude. I really appreciate you. Thanks for joining. Wish you well. Bon appetit.